Welcome back, one and all. Mike Farrell's Sports Talk Show is upon you. My name is Adam, and Mike Farrell is with me again for this week. Mike, a nice, interesting week in college football. Some interesting results that we have to absolutely get into. I definitely want to make sure we talk about that Clemson team that you said was number 2. Turns out the wrong kind of number 2. But let's start off with this: the game of the weekend, maybe the game of the season so far. Georgia, Tennessee. Obviously in Georgia, a Tennessee team that had been just running roughshod offensively through all the teams in the SEC, including one Alabama. A Georgia defense, which we weren't really sure what to expect. They seemed like they were still pretty good, but lost a lot from last year. Georgia had been a little bit up and down, so never knew what to expect here. And what you got, Mike, was really Georgia just handled Tennessee from start to finish. A nice, easy victory in some respects for the Bulldogs, Mike. So big takeaway from you out of this contest is what?
Georgia's better than we thought. I mean, they were favored by 9, 8.5. That it was a wonky line. It was kind of weird. Why would the number 1 team in the country that nobody could stop offensively be, a 9-point underdog on the road? But I think people knew something, and the something that we've learned that they knew is that the way to defeat this Tennessee offense with their wide splits is to play press coverage and blitz. Leave your corners and safeties out there to do their job and get after Hendon Hooker. It could be the same blitz over and over again. It could be different blitz, different looks. But if you can do that, you can beat Tennessee. Alabama couldn't, it's odd because Nick Saban's the D-back guru of the world, and they always have 5-star kids, but they couldn't match up properly. Georgia, their corners, their safeties were able to play press and handle the wide receiver core on their own. And this is with Cedric Tillman. So it's extremely impressive. And I think Georgia's by far the best team in the country. I don't think there's really any – I think Tennessee could be the second best team in the country. I don't think there's really any debate here that Georgia is head and shoulders above everybody else at this point.
Yeah, look, I am a Josh Heupel truther, right? So for full transparency, I cover UCF in my other spare time here. Obviously, Heupel was the head coach at UCF, and there were certainly 2 teams that always gave Josh Heupel problems at UCF, and they ran 2 very similar style defenses. That was Cincinnati and Tulsa. It was a 3-3-5 defense. You roll your coverage to the outside to pick up some of the screen passes, and you get pressure on the quarterback. And if you do those things, Heupel's offense, unfortunately, just isn't one of these systems that can make big adjustments and respond. Their system largely is our athletes are better than yours, and we're going to run right past you, and we have too many of them, and you can't keep up with us. And if that doesn't work, there isn't really a second gear for the Tennessee offense. And that's not a knock on the Tennessee offense, by the way, because it's by far the most prolific in college football. But when it's down, it's down, and there's really kind of no turning around. I'm actually surprised, frankly, it took this long for somebody to figure that out. But I think Georgia was the interesting team. That, to your point, we weren't sure defensively what they were this year. A ton of talent left that team last year to the NFL, so you weren't really sure what they did, Mike. And that, to your point, was a damn impressive defensive performance by the Bulldogs.
Well, and I don't think it's a figure out thing. I just think it's a can't do thing. You mentioned Cincinnati, and what did they have?
Sauce Gardner, baby. Myjai Sanders.
I mean,
Kobe Bryant, yes.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant's another NFL cornerback. Sauce Gardner is was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Long guys could play press, and that's you wouldn't think Alabama would be lacking in that area, but they are. The safeties got exposed. The corners couldn't. They couldn't stop the free release off the line of scrimmage. They had to play back. And that just killed them. So Georgia doesn't have to do that. So I think people look at this, especially guys like you who covered Heupel's offense at UCF, but you can't do it. I mean, you have to have the personnel to do it. So you could try it all you want. And when it starts failing, then you're in big trouble. Then you start to panic a little bit. So let's say you try to blitz, and you try to leave them on an island, and they get toasted. So then you have to change your strategy. And you get a little bit wonky about it. Then you play off, and then you start to drop your linebackers to try to flood the secondary and make the passing windows difficult. And that just plays into what they want to do. So, Georgia has the personnel to do it. Great game plan, tremendous defensive effort. And, we knew they would try to play power football. We knew they would run the ball. They would, try to control the clock and out physical Tennessee. Tennessee's defense didn't play bad. They're just used to their offense scoring 50 points, and there was no way they were going to do it. So if that's the Georgia team, now again, we saw Georgia against Oregon, but it's hard to really say that's the same Oregon team that we're seeing now. Maybe it is. Maybe this Georgia team is just so good. Maybe they're even better than last year. I know they're better offensively than last year. Maybe this is just a Georgia team that is just not going to be touched or beaten by anybody. And Tennessee could be the second best team in the country, and they lost by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, let's talk about the Georgia offense for a second. Now, you were one in previous shows. We talked about Stetson Bennett was solid, not spectacular as a quarterback. He didn't really light it up. 17 to 25 for 250, essentially 2 touchdown passes. The rushing attack for Georgia wasn't really stout either. Leading rusher Kenny McIntosh only had 52 yards, but they found enough efficiently on offense. They found opportunities to make big plays. They took advantage of those big plays when they had to, and they did just enough to put points on the board. Again, this was 24-6. It was a 27-6 game, like heading into the fourth quarter. And Tennessee got a garbage time touchdown with about 4 minutes to go. That made it 27-13. But it was an efficient offensive performance. Knowing that Georgia has the defensive chops to do something like this to a team, how much of their offense concerns you on a go-forward basis? Will the offense be able to do enough to continue to help Georgia win games?
It's an interesting question because you look at the teams that they're probably going to play. Ohio State, which is completely different from Michigan. So you have to assume one of those 2 teams is going to emerge from the Big Ten and will be in Georgia's way in some way, shape, or form. TCU, they're a very intriguing offense, and but can Georgia shut down those offenses? Can they handle a power running attack like Michigan has? Especially with Nolan Smith injured and some of the guys being banged up. I don't know. I know they can handle Ohio State. That I know. Based on what I saw from Tennessee, Ohio State has better wide receivers. You could argue C.J. Stroud's better than Hendon Hooker, but I don't think there's a huge difference there. They can shut down Ohio State. The offense doesn't have to do a lot, I don't think, if the defense could shut people down. The teams I would worry about, honestly, would be probably Michigan and TCU, just because it's a balanced attack. Everybody thinks Michigan runs the ball 85 times, never throws, but there is play action, and you play out Blake Corum. And TCU with Duggan and his ability to move and throw on a run is kind of intriguing and difficult. We don't know who else is going to emerge in here. A lot of crazy things are going to happen. I don't think, we're done when it comes to, okay, these are our 4 playoff teams. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan have to play. The loser of that's probably going to be punted out, but maybe not. Oregon is making a move. USC still got 1 loss. LSU, depending on how much the committee likes them. But I'm not worried about the offense. This is an offense that is very well balanced. Brock Bowers, heading into this game, hadn't caught more than 5 passes in any game this season. So, when I was doing my Betting Pros podcast with Thor, Saturdays, 10 a.m., by the way, Eastern time on YouTube, Betting Pros.
YouTube, Betting Pros.
One of the props I took was, Brock Bowers over 59 yards or something like that, and I thought it was coming. I thought it was going to be easy to come in. They're going to have to. Yeah, it was way off. The guy had 3 catches for 27 yards. He still hasn't surpassed 5 catches in a game, but they've got Ladd McConkey. They've got Arian Smith for speed. They've got Rosemy Jack-Saint. They've got serviceable Kyrus Jackson. They got serviceable guys at receiver. They got a balanced rushing attack with 4 guys, and you could say 5 with Stetson Bennett. They don't make mistakes. They don't turn the ball over, and they let their defense dictate how things are going. So I think they match up very well with an Ohio State from an offensive perspective and a defensive perspective. I don't know, can they handle a mobile quarterback like Bo Nix? If Oregon gets back there, this is a different Bo Nix. They beat him 49-3, but this is a different Bo Nix. This is a different offensive scheme. This is a different confidence level. Would he give them trouble this time around? I'm not sure. Duggan and those teams, but I don't think anybody's going to challenge Georgia. And it sounds stupid, okay? They're 9-0. And we all know when you say something definitive in college football. I think last week I said we know Clemson's going to be in the playoff. I said that. and that turned out to be not true, and they got waxed by Notre Dame. Mississippi State, Kentucky, Georgia Tech are left on the schedule. They should win all those games, but you never know. And then they go to the SEC championship game against what, LSU maybe? You never know. But right now, I don't see anybody offensively or defensively. We had that debate, Mike versus the world, who's more balanced, Michigan versus Georgia. I think you took Georgia, right?
Yes.
I think you're right. I think they're more balanced, and they're the most balanced football team in the country. So they can beat you in many different ways. They could beat you defensively. They could beat you with the running game, and they could beat you with the pass. We just haven't seen that yet.
Well, let's get to that. We're going to talk about these teams anyway, so let's just transition.
Will you remind me too? I got to do my bet. My bet. I keep forgetting my bet online. So we have new sponsors for the show. I know it's super exciting for you, right?
Yeah, let's go. If you want to show me in advance, I could probably help you out with some of this stuff. But feel free to do it live. Yeah,
I did text you. I did say, "Can you remind me of Bet Online?" And you didn't do it for 2 straight weeks. Do you remember that?
I don't. No.
I'll do the read. You really? I texted you.
Is there a read?
Yeah, I'm going to do the read. Ready?
You do it right now. Okay, everybody, listen up. Mike Farrell has an important announcement about a new sponsor.
A new sponsor of ours. So is Butcher Box, by the way. And last night I went over a friend's house to watch the Monday Night Football game, and he had Butcher Box chicken, and he had wings and chicken breasts that he grilled up. Delicious, unbelievable. Butcher Box is a subscription meat service, and I can't think of a better way to go than that. But Bet Online. So this is a basketball plug. Basketball is back. Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup information, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, they feature live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. Fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf, and of course, college football. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, and you'll receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts. I'm going to send this to you so that you can read it next time, because I think you're probably better at reads than I am.
No, that sounded really authentic. I believe it, by the way. I would go to betonline.ag. Use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, Mike. Here's the thing. I always tell these people when they ask about these things, you're watching these games anyway, right? It's not like you have to go out of your way. You're already watching these games. All these teams you probably already follow. You probably already eat and breathe and sleep this stuff anyway. You might as well make a little scratch off it too while you're at it, right? Like it's a no-brainer. Have some fun, put a little skin in the game. It's a super, super good idea.
Well, here's the other thing too. My props usually come in. I was 4 or 5 a week, not this past weekend, but a week before that. Brock Bowers didn't come in, but Brew McCoy came in for me. And my number one prop last week, and we're probably going to talk about this game next, Jaden Daniels. It was 79 yards rushing. No, it was I think it was 59 yards rushing. He's averaging like 74 yards rushing per SEC contest. And that includes negative yards for sacks. And also you get negative yards in college football. A lot of people don't know this when you're betting, for intentional grounding. So if you intentionally ground it, it counts as a sack, and it's negative, whatever yards where you grounded it. He ended up with 98 yards, I believe, and was sacked 6 times, so he was well over 100. So people who follow this stuff, and I dig into the props every week for not for Bet Online, for Betting Pros, you can make some scratch, as you said. It's kind of fun. Make money and watch college football. I mean, that's what we do, right?
Sport. Michael, you rattled off like 9 different sports I can watch and I can get action on. I mean, why would I not do that? I'm already watching these things anyway, right? I'm watching golf. I'm watching college basketball. I'm watching football. I might as well.
I love betting golf. Love it.
No-brainer.
Love it. And I'm usually not good at it, because I always pick the guy with the high odds, because there's no fun picking, a Rory McIlroy to win a tournament when he's like, plus 120. I'll pick some dude I never heard of, and he'll come in second, and I'll lose. But I still love betting golf. So, but it is exciting. I mean, listen, like I said, we got Bet Online. I'm doing the Betting Pros thing on Saturday. So this is the 3rd mention of them. Bettingpros.com, and they're also part of Fantasy Pros, which is for your fantasy football. And now we got Bet Online Butcher Box for Believe. I mean, we're we got to space these.
We got to space these ads out better next time. I'm not sure how Betting Pros and Bet Online want their stuff commingled like this, but let's space these out next time.
Well, here's the thing: Betting Pros doesn't take your gambles. What they do is they give you advice on gambling. Bet Online takes
The
you.
synergy,
It
and then
can.
eat some
Yeah,
Butcher
but
Box, and you've got a full lunch at the same time. Look at this, Mike.
oh
You're
my
learning,
God.
you're eating,
Gamble
and you're
and
making
eat
money. Oof.
meat, and
Wow.
you'll live till 85, I think. Right?
Ladies and gentlemen, mark your calendar, whatever date you're listening to this. The start of the Mike Farrell empire has begun. Um, let's get back into the sports world, though, into the football world. We're going to talk about these teams anyway, so let's just go right to the college football playoff rankings. Depends on when you're listening to us. Mike and I are talking in Tuesday afternoon, so the Tuesday rankings have not yet been released, so we do not know what the rankings are. At least we don't know publicly. I think we all know what the rankings are going to be, Mike. So let's talk about this because there's certainly going to be a bunch of movement in the rankings this week. Obviously, Tennessee was number one. That's not going to hold, right? Georgia, I think we can all agree, slides into number one at that point, right? So Georgia's the new number one team when these things come out Tuesday.
Thing that should be determined and locked in. That's the only one that's right. Georgia.
The other changes that you keep in mind, Clemson was 4. They are going to be knocked down, obviously losing at Notre Dame in pretty handy fashion. Alabama was number 6. They lose to LSU on a 2-point conversion play. LSU was number 10. Obviously, they beat Alabama. Those are probably the biggest movers in terms of, and Ohio State kind of stubbed the toe a little bit in a blustery, weathery sort of, the grass is 75 feet high situation at Ryan Field at Northwestern. But we all agree Georgia's one, Mike. So then who is number 2?
Well, it's going to be Ohio State, and it shouldn't be. And then Michigan's going to be number 3. Okay. And then Tennessee's going to be number 4. And undefeated TCU will be outside the top 4, and they'll be number 5. And I'll tell you why.
Will they be 5?
Well, who would be ahead of them? LSU?
Oregon? LSU?
No. Oregon's got.
It just seems like TCU is not going to get the love. It seems like we're going to find. I mean, they struggled a little bit against Texas Tech. Yeah, they come up with a win, right? But it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
I'll give them 5 though. You'll throw them a bone at 5 because I don't think you could put a 2-loss LSU team above them. If that happened, then the SEC bias.
You could put Oregon. Could you put Oregon above them?
You could 8-1, but they don't have a lot of big wins. And the drubbing.
Well, does that Georgia loss now look better that you see that Georgia is by far the best team in the nation?
It looks better if it was 49.
Quality losses, Mike. Quality
42.
Losses.
That would be better. 3 doesn't look better. I don't give a crap who you are. That's a bad loss.
Fair. That's fair. That is fair.
But Oregon's, got a BYU win as a top 25 team. They got a UCLA win as a top 25 team, but the rest is all garbage. I mean, Stanford, Washington State, Cal, Colorado, Arizona. They're kind of a paper 8-1 champion here, and I don't think they're going to pass TCU. TCU has, I believe, they got 4 top 25 wins. Teams that were top 25, and yes, Oklahoma's in there, and that shouldn't really count. But 4 top 25. TCU will be number 5. Now they should be at the minimum 4. You could make a case like I did with Clemson last week that they could be 2, but that sucked because Clemson sucks, and we'll get into Clemson sucking in a little bit. But what they're going to do is they're going to put the brands up there. They're going to put Ohio State number 2.
Well, hold on. So, you said Ohio State will be 2, but they should not be. Well, make your case for Ohio State not being number 2.
Well, the winning percentage of their opponents is below 500. It just is. I mean, Northwestern didn't help. They're horrible. They're 1-8. That drops the winning percentage of their opponents under 500.
You could hide a dead body in that field that they call Ryan Field. You could hide a dead body in there.
I get it. And they didn't have Trevion Henderson. They didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba. It was 40-mile-an-hour winds. Well, it was 20-mile-an-hour winds with 40-mile-an-hour gusts. Northwestern did not play this football game to win. We know that. We watched it. We saw. He wanted to keep it close, and he wanted to keep it into a punting contest. But still, it's a crap win. Now, I'm not saying they should drop. They should have just never been up here. They should have never been up here, too. They're up here because of preseason. Their best win is Penn State. And then their next best win is Notre Dame, which is looking better. Okay. Notre Dame got a pulse now. They're 6-3. They just beat a top 5 football team. So that's good. That's why I have them ahead of Michigan. But I don't have them number 2. Michigan's opponent's record is worse than Ohio State's. It's well below 500. Rutgers didn't help it. I mean, Rutgers, I think, is 4-5 now. But they beat some of the worst teams you're ever going to think of, at the beginning of the season, like the Hawaiis and the UConns of the world. And they really have one good win, which is Penn State. Their second best win is Maryland, who just lost to Wisconsin. So they're an average team. So the resume is not there for either of these teams to be 2-3. But they play in the Big Ten. They're big brands. Michigan was in the playoff last year. Ohio State's been in the playoff pretty much consistently. So they're going to be ahead of a TCU team that's undefeated that has better wins. The biggest thing for me is I honestly think 1 should be Georgia and 2 should be Tennessee, because
that's a compelling argument. It's a compelling argument. I mean, you look at who Tennessee's beaten. They beat an LSU pretty handily, 40-13, who just beat Alabama. They also beat Alabama, by the way. They also beat a good Pitt team earlier in the year. And we clearly know that Georgia is a pretty good football team, and they lost to that team. You could make a compelling argument. There's no way they're going to do it because the optics of doing that, but you could legit make an argument. I usually think your arguments are a little bit horse hockey, but on this one, I think you actually may have something on this one.
Horse hockey.
Usually, your mind of Mike stuff is usually way out there. Too much butcher box. Too much. I don't know. Too much red meat clogging your brain waves. I don't know.
We're gonna do a mind, not a mind of Mike, but a Mike versus the world on. And I stated this on Twitter, and I got ratioed like crazy. But the team,
you love that though. Don't lie to me.
The team in this college football with the best wins is still Tennessee, and people think I'm nuts. But here's my point. Georgia beat Oregon. Oregon's 6th in the country. That's a great win. Okay. Georgia beat Tennessee. Tennessee is going to be probably 4th in the country. That's another great win. After that, they don't have any other good ones. None. Just none. Missouri, Kent State, South Carolina, just garbage. Vanderbilt, all absolute garbage. Tennessee has a win over Alabama. Now, Alabama's probably going to be in the top 10 in the playoff rankings still. They have a win over LSU, who's now clearly going to be in the top 10 of the playoff rankings. That's 2 really good wins. They beat a Kentucky team that was in the top 20 at the time. They beat a Florida team that was in the top 20 at the time. They beat a Pitt team that was in the top 20 at the time. The argument can be made, and there's really no argument against it, but everybody thinks I'm an idiot. Tennessee has the best wins this season, period. Total. Now, we're going to do a Mike versus the world. You're obviously going to take the fact that Georgia's got the best wins because they drilled Oregon and Tennessee. But that's my argument why they should be number 2. Just because they lost the number 1 team in the country, who's clearly number 1, doesn't mean that they should free fall behind Michigan, who's played a bunch of cadavers, and Ohio State, who's played nobody as well. It's just no reason for it. But it will happen. Just doesn't make sense.
All right, so then, round out the committee's top 6. So it sounds like you have Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. You think Tennessee will get the 4 spot?
I think Tennessee will get the 4 spot. I think TCU will get the 5th spot, and I think Oregon will be 6th. And I think LSU will be 7. And then after that, you still got some teams that have an opportunity to get in. One team, USC. Clemson's going to free fall. They just are because of the ACC perception, a bad loss on the road to a 6-3 football team. They're out of it. Alabama's out of it. UCLA never has a chance to get in it, I don't believe, because their brand isn't enough. And honestly, their attendance is still colossally embarrassing. Ole Miss has a chance to get back in it if they beat Alabama. But that's really it. We're down to probably 7 teams. Maybe 8 teams that have a chance to make the playoff. I think that's where we're at. So I've got LSU at 7, USC at 8, Oregon's going to be 6, and TCU will be 5.
How far does Bama fall?
Because it's Bama, it wouldn't shock me if they're ahead of USC still. Wow. But I think USC is going to be 8, and I think Bama is going to be 9. But Bama will not fall out of the top 10. God forbid.
But Clemson is going to hurdle their way out of the top 10.
They're out of the top 10. I think they deserve to be out of the top 10. Listen, I banged the drum for Clemson all week, and it was probably the wrong time to bang the drum for Clemson. I should have banged the drum for Clemson prior to maybe the Syracuse game, or maybe prior to the Florida State game. I chose on the road at Notre Dame, which is arguably their biggest test this year. I mean, you could say Wake Forest, and you could say NC State, and you could say Syracuse, but at Notre Dame, turned out to be a disaster for them. They looked horrible. They were never in that football game. The quarterback situation there is kind of a joke because he stuck with him to the point where it was, 28-0 in the 4th quarter, and you're still sticking with the guy. I think they should be punished. Sorry. For that.
It wouldn't be an episode without some form of an ESPN commercial.
Danville. I just think they should be punished for that and get out of there. I was, again, had they beaten Notre Dame on the road and in, somewhat convincing style or even 10 points or even a touchdown, I could still sit here and make the case that they should be number 2, probably not ahead of Tennessee, but at least I'd make the case that they could be number 3. And it would be an argument between them and TCU because I do think Michigan and Ohio State have no good wins aside from Penn State. And I already mentioned Penn State was just a joke. But they lost, and they lost badly. So get them out of here. You don't deserve to be in this discussion anymore.
Well, let's talk about Clemson since you want to get them out of here. They don't deserve to be in discussion. Let's have a discussion, Mike, because an interesting thing happened over the weekend. USF, University of South Florida, which is in Tampa, oddly enough, by the way, they have relieved Jeff Scott of his duties, their head coach. I think he's something like 1-27 against the FBS teams in his tenure at USF in 3 years there. If that name is familiar to you, it should be. He spent a lot of time on the Clemson staff on the offensive side of the ball for the longest time. Him and Tony Ellett were the co-OCs of that particular team that obviously had some good runs there, Mike. So Jeff Scott now on the market. Yep. Obviously, Clemson ties. One would argue if you tangentially, I keep an eye on USF because they're a rival of the team I play. Jeff Scott seems like he never really let go of Clemson. There's always seemed to be a little bit of Clemson and press conferences he talked about. Wore some shirts here and there. So, are we getting the band back together? Jeff Scott back to save Clemson?
Well, I think it could be next season. Dabo he's a loyal guy, and he likes, the family feel of things. Brent Venables was there forever. He lost him. Tony Elliott was there as the co-offense coordinator, as you mentioned, but Jeff Scott was there, and Jeff Scott worked with the wide receivers, and they've really depleted. And he worked with the quarterbacks too. Their wide receiver, the danger level of their wide receivers has depleted greatly since Jeff Scott left. The quarterback play has obviously dipped, and you're going to have that, of course, when you go from Deshaun Watson, sort of a segue into Trevor Lawrence. You're going to have a dip. But this offense is very predictable. It was predictable last year, too, under Tony Elliott. So, no great shakes for him either. They've had to dumb down the offense quite a bit for DJ Uiagalelei because cognitively, I don't think he gets it. I don't think he's quick enough. And this doesn't mean he's dumb. It just means from a quarterback perspective, he was starting to show me signs of making quicker decisions against Wake Forest and starting to show confidence. But I think what's happened here is the team didn't have confidence in him. They lost 3 games last year, and their offense was abysmal and anemic. Up and down this season, it's been okay, not okay. The second he struggles, I think everybody on that sideline at Clemson, except for the coaches, it clearly starts to roll their eyes and say, here we go again. And that's what happened against Notre Dame. It's not a coaching issue as much as it's, Brandon Streeter is a good coach. He's a serviceable person, and he knows what to do. It's more of a loyalty to DJ. But the fans want Jeff Scott back. The fans do not like what they're seeing here. They were happy to see Tony Elliott go last season. They're happy to see Brandon Streeter go if they can get rid of him. They want Jeff Scott back because they think he's the link to the old success at Clemson. My argument would be he's not. This has to change from
solid argument.
Every perspective needs to change here. Cade Klubnik is a guy who came into the game, and he came into the Syracuse game, and they don't trust him, obviously, because he's not throwing the ball a lot. We have to see how he develops to see if this isn't a trend. Is Trevor Lawrence a generational talent? I think he is, and I think he was Deshaun Watson. And I don't like the word generational talent because I could say the same about Deshaun Watson. But I do believe Trevor Lawrence was probably the best quarterback that I've seen from a high school level to college level in the last 20 years. Deshaun Watson, not to that level, but very, very good. Those guys, maybe it's easy to develop them. Maybe Elliott and Scott get the benefit of the doubt, being able to develop guys like that. We're going to see. But Jeff Scott, the Clemson fans all want him back. They want him back. I mean, he's fired. They want him hired this week.
He's available. Yeah, he's available.
They want him this week. They want Streeter downgraded, and they want Jeff Scott hired this week. That's not going to happen. But next season, I could certainly see a a little bit of a reunion between Dabo and Jeff Scott. It doesn't matter now. I mean, you got Louisville, Miami, and South Carolina. You can run the table there if you want to, and you can go play UNC in the ACC title game. And if you win that, you're still not making the playoffs. So this season's over.
Well, they'll be in a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, they still have a New Year's Six bowl in front of them. I know those aren't the expectations at Clemson, but I mean, they'll still play at a New Year's Six game.
Yeah, but they're not the expectations. So this season's kind of a wash, especially in the ACC, where the ACC is like, considered a layup, and they shouldn't lose any games. Now, this is not a conference game, but it is a Notre Dame team that plays a lot of ACC teams, has that fake sort of partnership with the ACC, and does very good against ACC teams traditionally. But it's a game you shouldn't have lost, honestly. Marshall beat Notre Dame at home. Stanford beat Notre Dame at home, and he got drilled. So Jeff Scott will be called for by the fans to come back. Brandon Streeter, the timing of this is not great for him because he's going to have to listen to how predictable this offense is. But I think it circles around one dude, and I also think it is lack of development at the wide receiver position. I think Jeff Scott did a remarkable job there that is underappreciated, more so than when we look at the quarterbacks. Wide receivers could bail out DJ. They just don't have them on this roster.
Dabo has a really weird coaching tree. Now that I think about this, Jeff Scott obviously not doing well. Tony Elliott, I guess too early to tell, but probably not great. Chad Morris certainly didn't pan out. Brent Venables struggling early on. He's got a really weird coaching tree, that Dabo.
Horrible coaching tree, honestly.
Wow.
But I mean, he's been successful. I think. And we're going to do a Mike versus the world on this too. I think a case could be made that this is kind of, and it's overreaction, of course, right? But this is sort of a step towards Clemson no longer being a consistent playoff undefeated contender. They lost 3 last year. They just lost to Notre Dame. They're not going to make the playoff. Now, as you mentioned, New Year's Six, yeah. But as a playoff contender, this is the first time since the playoff has been in existence that Alabama and Clemson will not be in it, barring some crazy stuff. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a change. In the SEC, we have teams emerging. The ACC, we don't have anybody emerging. But I think Clemson might be that 10-2 team moving forward under Dabo, which isn't going to get it done.
Well, that team was supposed to be Miami, Mike, and they got absolutely just slaughtered at home to a Florida State team that's been up and down. I mean, they're a good team, Florida State is, but they absolutely just annihilated Miami.
So bad. I mean,
and that was the team you're high on. I know, Mike, I know you thought that Mario would turn things around. I know you were one that said, "Hey, give him some time. Though he's going to have to rehaul the roster." But did you think it'd be this bad that they'd be 4-5, losing to Duke, losing to Middle Tennessee, getting drubbed at home to Florida State?
There's no excuse for it, honestly. And everybody can talk about, and Mario can talk about how the culture here was broken. And hey, at Fansville, and
I've heard of that before. Yeah, maybe they should sponsor the show.
And recruiting wasn't up to par, and the fan support wasn't what it needs to be. And we're going to change all that, but it's going to take time. Well, guess what? It's an embarrassing situation now.
Well, to be fair, really quick, Mike, that stadium was full. That stadium was as full as it's ever been for a Hurricane home game. So when Mario talks about we want fan support, you had him. You had him in the seats. All you had to do was put up a good performance, and you got absolutely waxed by Florida State. Your chief rival.
This is a Miami team that won 5 of their last 7 games last season. This was a Miami team that had Tyler Van Dyke, who was on an upward trajectory towards a potential second or first round, quarterback.
Yeah. Yep.
This is a team that was trending in the right direction, and now Mario has taken it over, and this is a team that's moving backwards and very far backwards. Middle Tennessee was just a horrible loss. They got blown out by Duke. Okay, guess what? Duke has a new head coach. He's a first-year guy, and he's 6-3, and that's Duke, which is a 10 times harder job. So all the excuses, I like Mario Cristobal. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a tremendous recruiter. I'm not sure if he's a good coach yet. We're going to find out.
Well, I don't know if he's a good hirer of coaches. It feels like Josh Gaddis, the OC there, just doesn't fit what that scheme wants to be.
And Kevin Steele's not a good hire either. I mean, come on. There's always these plug-in guys. I mean, who's the dude that Venables hired at defensive coordinator for Oklahoma? What the hell is his name? I can't remember. There's these guys have been around forever. Have been at 15 schools. and they've made their reputation as defensive coordinators, but none of them really can speak to a lot of success. Yeah, Kevin Steele I think he was at Alabama when they had a great defense.
Ted Roof, by the way, is the DC there.
Ted Roof, there is another one. I mean, these are former head coaches, both of these guys, very experienced, but it's the old, it's your drinking buddies network. Josh Gaddis was thought to be a really good hire. He was the assistant coach of the year last year, but I think we all knew and now know more than ever that was Jim Harbaugh running that offense and running the style of offense that he wanted. And now Josh Gaddis has gotten there, and Van Dyke's a disaster. The team can't move the ball. They lost their best receiver early in the season, but I mean, if your best receiver is Raspoto or whatever, I mean, you're
Xavier Restrepo.
You're in a bad place. But
yes,
all that being said, there's no way on earth I can say Duke is 6-3 and Miami's 4-5, and that's not a coaching issue. Duke is Duke. Miami still has a roster of talent, but to lose to Duke 45-21, to lose to Middle Tennessee State, of course, in an embarrassing loss. And then to get waxed by Florida State, where Florida State could do anything they wanted. Florida State could do anything they wanted.
No opposition at all.
It was like 8 yards to every play, not just every pass, every play. That's embarrassing. So we're reaching a point now where they're going to struggle with Georgia Tech. They struggle with Virginia. They had to win that game on field goals in 80 overtimes. They're going to get killed by Clemson, and then Pitt's going to beat them. And so let's say they beat Georgia Tech and lose those other two. You've got yourself a 5-7 football season, which is worse than last year when you had to fire Manny Diaz. He's going nowhere. He's going to be there for 5 years. There's no hot seat. There's no warm seat. There's nothing. Kermani McClain, the 5-star defensive back, chooses Miami at the last second. They've got 5 stars up the wazoo in this class. Recruiting is going great, as we knew it would. But the results on the field are just almost as embarrassing as I can remember at Miami. And that's Randy Shannon. That's Al Golden. That's
the end of Larry Coker.
Manny Diaz, It's just bad. I mean, at the end of Larry Coker, those teams would beat this Miami team, I don't know, 50-0.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, yeah.
And I think Al Golden's teams would beat this team very soundly. And I think Manny Diaz's team last year would beat this team probably by 14 points.
We mentioned this team briefly. Let's get back to that really quickly. Jeff Scott's vacated the University of South Florida head coaching position. They now have a search commencing. And this is an interesting search for you, Mike. I know there's a couple names that you're kind of thinking about in terms of who could turn around the Bulls, who have not had a fantastic run. Willie Taggart left them in 2016. Charlie Strong had him on the doorstep of 2017. They lose a close game to UCF and really haven't recovered since then. Charlie's gone 2 years later. Jeff Scott's there, and again, it just hasn't turned around. They are 1-8, obviously, this year, but it's in a fertile recruiting ground in Tampa, Florida. You know that market as well as anybody. A ton of athletes, recruits hanging around that area. So there's opportunity, Mike. If someone wants to come and take this job, the right coach, who's that fit for you to take over at USF?
Well, it could be Deion Sanders, and that's the thing. We did the debate last week, and you mentioned Florida State. Yep. I think I said Auburn, but after that debate, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, why are we penciling this guy in as a Power 5 coach? His resume is nothing. He's a Hall of Famer as a player. He was a high school coach with average results, and now he's dominating, at the FCS level with a team that has a roster that's 10 times better than anybody who plays. Nobody can challenge this team. And simply because it's Deion and he can recruit. I don't know if he's coached this team up. I don't know if he has any. The FCS level to Power 5 is a massive, massive jump, and most people don't make it there. You have to step in between. Lance Leopold's done a great job at Kansas. He went from Division II, I believe, to Group of 5 to Power 5. That's just kind of how everybody takes this approach. So for Deion to be penciled in for Auburn, I don't think they'd offer him the job. FSU is a different story because he is an alum, and that job's not obviously available. And Mike Norvell's going nowhere.
Yeah, it
Anytime.
looks like he's trying. I know you were one that was a little bit concerned about. I saw on social media
Yeah.
you were getting dragged a little bit for that Mike Norvell take, but it sounds like he's at least solidified himself for another season or
Oh,
two.
he's safe now. I mean, that was the game. Not only did you beat Miami, you beat them on the road, and you beat them in just amazing fashion. When they started off 4-0, and he still got to brag. He can brag about the LSU win at the beginning of the season. It's similar to like, okay, if LSU played Florida State now, they'd probably wax them. And if Oregon played Georgia now, it'd probably be a close game, but it doesn't matter. You still have a top 10 win on your resume. You just destroyed your rival on the road and embarrassed them. He's not going anywhere. At the beginning of the season, I thought certain teams would be better. I thought Louisville would be more consistent. I thought Boston College would actually have a pulse. I thought Miami would be a test for them, based on last season, 5-7, blah, blah, blah. You look at it at the beginning of the season, you're like, okay, Miami might be in a better shape than Florida State. None of that coming true. He's a top 25 coach now. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Even if things falter at the end of this season, they're going to, continue to build on his name in recruiting. So he survived, I think, a potentially difficult season, and he's actually thriving. So Deion doesn't have that job, nor would he if Mike Norvell was fired or suddenly left for another job. I don't think you can pencil him in because he lacks experience. Georgia Tech, I've mentioned that's a great fit, but I don't know if Georgia Tech wants a guy who has no, FBS recruiting experience. I mean, not recruiting experience, coaching experience. He can recruit, because he's Deion. So my point here is take the steps like everybody else. Maybe the USF job is a great fit for him from a recruiting standpoint. The AAC is going to be down a little bit with the teams moving to the Big 12. You have an opportunity to take that next step of progression, be successful there. Then at that point, if Deion's doing what he does now at USF, which is a big rebuild, but I think he could do it, then he picks and chooses his job. But I don't think there's this pick and choose that the media thinks. And I fell into it a little bit. And I'm just sort of checking myself saying, if I'm making a $1 million decision and my job's on the line, I'm not hiring Deion at a Power 5 school. Just not.
Yeah, I agree with that specifically. I just don't know that Deion agrees with that, right? I think he thinks he's in that level of getting a Power 5 style job. That's where I'm curious if he would even consider a Group of 5 job in USF, a team that, to your point, obviously they're kind of being left behind in the new revamped American Conference. They don't have an on-campus stadium. They're just about to open an indoor practice facility, but their facilities are not on par with a lot of other programs that are around there. Deion is from the Fort Myers area, which is, an hour up I-75, right? So he gets a little closer to home, but I don't know if that's the fit. I think here's the other thing, Mike, I would tell you is for USF, this is an absolute crucial hire. I mean, this could be that hire that makes or breaks this program because they're already kind of on a downslide. They're trying to get funds together to build an on-campus stadium. And if this thing continues in the tank, I mean, they need to turn this thing around quickly. Or it could be really, really tough sledding for USF going forward.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, look at the programs leaving. UCF, Cincinnati, Houston are all leaving. They have pretty good recruiting territories. Obviously, UCF and Houston with those two great states, but Ohio is a great state to recruit. The players that can't go to Ohio State, yeah, they may go to Michigan or Penn State or Kentucky, who does a great job in the state of Ohio. But you're going to get some players, But then you look at who's left. Tulane, I mean, okay, good
SMU,
recruiting
Memphis.
area. Memphis, good recruiting area, but again, you're not going to win, 4-star battles. Temple, Tulsa,
SMU.
East Carolina, SMU. These aren't great power football teams. I mean, Tulane's 8-1 this season. They're a big surprise. SMU is just dysfunctional. That's a very weird situation there because I thought they would be much, much better. East Carolina's steady, but this isn't a really good AAC that you're dealing with here. So, yeah, they're at the bottom of the barrel right now. I mean, they're 1-8. That he beat one FBS team in his entire tenure at USF. They are
Temple.
in big trouble, but with the right coach who can recruit, they could rise very quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm saying that they could certainly stock up in a hurry. That's why this hire is so crucial, because if they miss again,
well, and I'm really surprised Scott didn't have more success there. And to a budgetary standpoint that you're talking about there, this is not a program that throws a lot of money at it.
No.
When you compare them to UCF, it was just an amazing, large alumni base, and Houston, which has a billionaire who's just tunneling and funneling money in there. South Florida they get nothing. They have to find somebody who's going to come in there, right the ship, get them back, to exciting. It was a time, I remember when he, they were a team that won a few recruiting battles here and there. They could recruit. The Tampa area, especially for them, was kind of fertile. But that was 10 years ago. It's really
10, 15 years ago under Jim Leavitt, this would have been the team that's going to the Power Five, right? If we stopped time there, this would be one of those teams. Absolutely.
But it's funny because it seems like just yesterday, but it's not. I mean, there's been problems. Obviously, you can't go from coach to coach to coach and have each of them unsuccessful. So you're right. This is a very important hire. I think this would be one of those jobs, though, where if Deion was interested in it, they would hire him in a second. I just don't think that decision is going to be made at the Power 5 level as easily as people think.
We'll keep an eye on it. I think here's some names I'll throw out for some fun, Mike. Tom Herman.
Yeah, good.
Tom Herman. Yeah. Here's another one that'll be really interesting. Scott Frost. I mean, he recruited that area pretty well at UCF. He knows that area. Now, I don't know if he can build a program or not, but would Dan Mullen ever do it?
Oh, I'm trying to wrap my arms around Scott Frost.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Some of the things I heard up in Nebraska about Scott Frost, I don't think he would be successful there. I just don't. I think he fell into a great situation. I think he fell into it face first. And I think he also was in a great situation at Oregon when he was a coordinator. I think the guy just got lucky. I don't think he's a good coach. And I don't think he would recruit well. Dan Mullen's a horrible recruiter, laziest man on earth, but he's a player developing guy. I mean, we talk about, the college football playoff. Mississippi State is one of, I think, 7 teams to be ranked number 1 in the college football playoff, and it was under Dan Mullen. So he could be magical, but he could also be just horrible, like he was at Florida the last 2 years, and just not giving a crap about recruiting and saying some things on in-home visits, which honestly are maybe for my book, if I ever write one, just hilarity of lack of awareness. So I don't think Dan Mullen would be successful there either. I don't know if Deion would be successful there. I don't know who the right fit is, but none of those names you just mentioned really are attractive to me.
All right. Somehow we spent too much time talking about USF. We have to stop that right now, Mike. That's actually pissing me off, but I want to know what's pissing you off this week. Usually there's something like a weather. Yeah. Well, welcome to Florida, brother, where I'm about to get a hurricane. So I hear you.
Daylight savings time, or whatever the hell you call it in the fall.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I imagine that's not something you enjoy at all.
No, it's I have seasonal depressive disorder. I have general depressive disorder. I have every depressive diagnosis known to man. So what you do is you change it to, getting dark at 4:30. I just want to go to bed at 5. It's miserable, and it's not necessary. Obviously it was done 100 years ago for farmers, or 200 years ago for farmers, and the state of Arizona doesn't do it because they're smart.
Wow.
But the world is dumb. So now it's dark at 4:30. I was going to try to get out yesterday to get 9 holes in, just to sort of, it's one of the things I do to recharge my brain and sort of take my mind off of, business and stuff. And I called, and the latest tee time with a cart was 1:39 for 9 holes. 1:39. Now, I don't mind walking. As fat as I am, I'll walk. But the people I was going to golf with don't want to walk. So I asked the girl, I said, why 1:39? It takes roughly 90 minutes to golf 9 in a cart, or at most 2 hours. But they want the carts back so they can close down at 3. It ruins, everything is ruined with the clocks changing. So now I just got to buckle down. And today's cold. Yesterday was 74. Today's like 48 here in Connecticut. I just got to buckle down and, slog through another winter and, just sort of get excited when I see Masters commercials for golf in February and then come to life.
Sorry to hear that. Wow. You could move.
It's dark. No, I can't move. But down there, you're
moved to Arizona. Apparently, that's where you're meant to be.
Yeah, I'm not a West Coast guy. 4:36 is sunset here. I think down in Florida, it's still like 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's about 5:30 ish. You'll start seeing the sun go down.
It's better. You guys will get hit like it up here. In Canada's worse. I get it. My Canadian friends up there, you got it worse than me. But up here in New England, it's bad. It's just bad. I was watching a Monday night football game last night. I was over a buddy's house, 8:15 start. When the 8:15 kickoff occurred, it felt like 2 a.m. I was half asleep, and I'm like, why is this game so late? And I got through a half, and then I had to drive home and go to sleep.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That Sunday 4 o'clock window for the NFL, which was dreadful, by the way, was Bucks, Rams, and Cardinals, Seahawks.
That was a bad game.
A terrible window, and it started at like 5:30. It was not good.
That was a bad game. And the other thing that pisses me off too is listen, I made Old Takes exposed. I know that guy. He's a Florida.
Yeah, congrats.
Fan. Well, yeah, you do. But he's a Florida guy, Florida fan. Yep. So if there's something with FSU, if there's something with Miami, or especially something with Florida, he likes to really hammer that home. I didn't know he saw that take. I haven't talked to him since he put it out there. We got a lot of attention. I got more followers. I think I got 500 followers out of it, which is great. And in this world, if you're wrong, you're better off than being right. If I went and said Mike Norvell's going to win 8 games this season and he's going to keep his job, nobody would ever retweet that. Nobody would ever remember that. No one would give a crap about it. But the fact that I said they might not win 6 and they can't find 6 on the schedule that he's going to win, I got followers. I got more clicks. I made more money. So thank you to all the haters, because I make money off of the attention, but it wasn't intentional. I don't do that on purpose. But what really not pisses me off, I'm puzzled by the human being that not just, retweets or calls me an idiot on Twitter. That's fine. That's just life. The one who has to go into the direct messages, take that extra step to click on the little envelope, and then to type that I'm an absolute idiot or a loser or an asshat or dumbest human being ever. That person, psychologically, I really want to dig into what's wrong with them, because that takes extra effort and extra time, and I'm not worth that. Yeah. And it's happened a lot this week, and it puzzles me every time I see it. I just want to know what that person does on a daily basis. I want to know how they wake up. I want to know what they do for work. I want to know what interactions they have with other human beings. I want to know if they've ever held the hand of a girl. I want to know what their problem is, because they appear to be a colossal, mega-sized loser.
Well, do me a favor. Next time it happens, respond back, invite him on the podcast. Let's have him on the show. We'll do a full interview. It could be, Mike versus the world in real life. Yeah. Let's do it.
One guy, he's director of physical occupational therapy at some place, called First Choice Medical Group. He seems to be an extremely successful human being. Mm-hmm. He's not a troll. If his picture is who he is, he seems to be an average-looking man. He's a health coach and wellness educator as well with a different company. He seems to have his life together. But yet, I have a strange feeling he could be the biggest loser known to man, because he took time out of his day to say, hey, Mike, Norvell got your 6 wins and sent me 3 crying emojis. And I just feel that this person might be
still emoji, not a mojo, by the way.
Yeah, mojo. He might be very limited, but yet he's fooled his way through life getting these jobs. So I just am fascinated by the psychology of it all.
I agree with you. Let's. I'm also fascinated by like those scam telemarketers who call you and tell you they need your. I want to know how often that works. Like, what's the ROI ratio on if I make 1,000 phone calls and I get one idiot to give me their credit card number? Is that worth the effort? I got to figure that out one day.
Well, the other thing too is like yesterday, my my buddy who I've known since high school really has a problem with telemarketer calls. Apparently, I get a lot of them. I have something called Robo Killer that usually blocks them, but it doesn't matter. You can block 10 and they'll crop up with an 11th number, right? He picks up the phone when he gets a number that he's aware is a telemarketer,
Yeah.
and he says this: "Take me off your call list, or I will kill you."
Hmm.
And he did it 3 times last night. And I said, "Yo, man, he's a successful person. He works in the sports world." I said, "Bro, maybe not a death threat."
Soften it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, he's like, "Well, what else is it going to take to get them off my call list?" I go, "A death threat ain't going to do it, first of all. And secondly, if somebody records that, you could be in big trouble." But yeah, there was one where a friend of mine last week sold something on Facebook, and they went to the direct pay. Do you have just like eBay on Facebook, you can sell through Facebook and they vet everything for you. But she went through the direct pay process, which is what 99% of the people do, and say, "Here's my PayPal, blah blah blah." And this person responded and they said, "I can't pay you in PayPal because you have to put in additional funds to your PayPal to get it, whatever, to accept the amount of money I'm sending you, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you the money." And then I Googled this scam. So what they do is they give you the money and then they go to PayPal and they ask for a refund and say, "This person scammed you." So then you end up owing PayPal. And I was just thinking, this is somebody's full-time life. This is somebody who's going on there every day and finding people who are selling stuff and doing this scam 100 times a day, as you mentioned, and maybe getting one of them to work a week. How is that? Does that work? Do they make a living? Are they rich?
Yeah.
I want to know.
We need to start a spin-off show of this where we interview people who just do random stuff and figure out how it works out.
I think that would be what I really want to do is find a guy who set that Georgia-Tennessee line. I think he lives in his mom's basement. I think he's on a spectrum of some sort, and I think he's a sports genius. But I want to know how 9 was the number that came up. They won by 14, but 9 came up when it should have been 4, maybe 5. There's no way Georgia should have been favored by 9. I think that guy might know more about sports than any of us combined. But I think in the gambling industry, that guy's kept quiet. That guy, but shouldn't there be a 60 Minutes thing on him by now? Like, this is the guy who sets the lines for Vegas. I don't know. I'd like to get him on.
All right. Well, we got a lot of people we got to book for future appearances on the show, Mike.
Any of them, and
we're going to do 0 of that.
I'll hit you up on Tuesday for a podcast. We should have done Sunday night, and I'll hit you up for Mike versus the World because you got a hard out in 2 minutes. So we got to get out of here. We won't do any of this. None of it.
Well, you should, listening, you should go to Mike's website. What's new with MikeFarrellSports.com, new content. What's the article they absolutely must check out right now?
Pretty much an article every hour, it seems, lately. I've got the 10 best coaching fits in order for Nebraska. Spoiler alert, Lance Leopold is number 1. I've got the 10 head coaching candidates for Auburn in order. I put Lane Kiffin up there. I don't think he would move to that job, but maybe if he did. Spoiler alert, Dan Lanning's not on there. Well, I think he is, but there was that rumor is quashed. I don't think he's going to Auburn. But 3-point stance, fact or fiction. We got a 5-star potentially flipping. Dante Moore rumored to be flipping in Michigan State. I've been told that's garbage. It's not going to happen, but he did change his Twitter picture from an Oregon to a dark sky or some whatever. We've got 5-star commitment coming out for LSU. We've got a 5-star decommitting from Texas A&M. We've got a lot of recruiting stuff up there. We're hammering recruiting. So check it out. Traffic is increasing. Everything's going well. We got sponsors now for the podcasts. I mean, it's all coming together. We're still 2 years away from being anything sort of important, but we're heading there.
Again, myfarrellsports.com. You can bookmark that. Follow him on Twitter. Don't send him nasty DMs, though, unless you want to come on the show. And then, in which case, have at it. But that's M. Farrell Sports on both Facebook. No, you're not on Facebook. Twitter and Instagram. Are you on Facebook? You should be on Facebook.
Yeah, it's Mike Farrell Sports on Facebook, too. I got like 6,000 followers there. I'm on TikTok, too. I'm on the TikTok. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Also, YouTube. You should go find him there.
Oh,
but,
I'm on that Sports,
I'm going to let Mike get to his tea time so he doesn't get too cranky. But we'll come back soon.
Yeah, no, it's 1:45. It's too late for a tea time. 48 degrees with 15-mile-an-hour winds. I'm going to go stare at the wall and wish I was dead. That's what I'm going to do.
Till next time.
Dark.